Identity now is the new perimeter. I think it's been, de facto standard what it is right now. We used to say endpoint used to be the perimeter, but I think the identity is now what's defining the value of what a compromised situation might be. So the value of an identity should be at the forefront. You're seeing a lot of investment from various organizations going into identity space. You're seeing a lot of situations where the identity is now the prime vector going into an organization. Most attackers now start with valid credentials that they have received from whatever way that they get their information from. They log in, then move laterally within the organization, elevating their privileges, whatever the case might be. So
what we see is generally there's a couple of things where when you're looking at feeds, you're really trying to understand what kind of data is there. Is it identities, is it the behavior? What are you trying to achieve? And then from an actionable perspective, you need to understand that if you don't have context around it, it's kind of hard. And then that's pretty much the context behind that, right? It's just trying to figure out what kind of alert is it? Is it good? Is it bad? And then tying it to identity and data.
Absolutely. The fidelity of the alert is actually one of the most important things you need to consider, right? Is it good? Is it high value to you? Is it the right priority that you need to have your team action those alerts, right?
I mean, I can, like, the way I see it, I've talked to some customers in this room too, and it's a learning curve for all parties, to be honest. Even I don't know sometimes when I'm sitting in that meeting, and I'm like, okay, how is this whole thing going to come together? Where are we intercepting the data? Who's going to look at it? How is that process flow? I think there's a lot to it, because you have these agents and then you have the agentic AI piece, right? They all work together. So there's layers of these things that you need to kind of bring together. And then the customer has like an LLM that they're building and they're trying to pull that resource in. So it's a very complex model. And I don't think so MSSPs have come that far yet, I believe, or are still in their immature state to kind of get that going while the customer is still building it.
Currently, if I were to look at my stance today, automate where possible, but sometimes there's limitations, whether it's due to legacy systems, homegrown systems, where there isn't any API that you can set up. But you did bring up a good point, like when you speak about MSSPs, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
So, and the MSSP is a part of the security team that manages the alerts, reviews the alerts, and triggers.
I have a very bullish stance on that. Personally speaking, I think we should be automating as much as possible, because if you want to be efficient, you need to automate, right? If you look at the latest Anthropic research where an attacking group leveraged fully AI automated attack, human intervention was from around 80 to 90%. Sorry, automated intervention was 80-90%. Human intervention was only 10 to 20%. We need to be as quickly as that. I'm more on the side of prevent it, block it, automate that, and ask for forgiveness afterwards, because I think that's a higher risk, lower reward type of viewpoint. But I'm also cognizant that business needs to continue, right? So certain businesses don't have that luxury to be able to fully automate that particular step. So every organization has to make their certain risk assessment based on it.
Security success isn't measured by how many alerts you generate. It's measured by how quickly you understand what matters and you stop it. Attackers don't care about dashboards. They care whether you acted in time. Thank you for joining us. Too many alerts, not enough action. How security teams actually stop attacks. Most organizations don't actually have a detection problem. They have a decision problem. We generate more alerts than ever, yet attackers still succeed by exploiting compromised identities, lateral movement, and slow response. So today isn't about how many alerts we produce. It's about which alerts actually change the outcome of an attack and how security teams move from noise to action when it matters most. So Hashim, When an attack is actually unfolding, what actually helps your team move from alert to decision to action, and what gets in the way?
What gets in the way? If you're looking at alerts, I think the way we gotta, so I'll just do a quick introduction. Sorry, I didn't do that. My name is Hashim. I'm with Netscope. I'm a regional sales manager supporting public sector. And from just high level, Netscope's a cloud security technology. And then from an alerts perspective, what we see is generally there's a couple of things where when we're looking at feeds, you're really trying to understand what kind of data is there. Is it identity? Is it the behavior? What are you trying to achieve? And then from an actionable perspective, you need to understand that if you don't have context around it, it's kind of hard. And then that's pretty much the context behind that, right? It's just trying to figure out what kind of alert is it? Is it good? Is it bad? And then tying it to identity and data.
Absolutely. The fidelity of the alert is actually one of the most important things you need to consider, right? Is it good? Is it high value to you? Is it the right priority that you need to have your team action those alerts, right?
And at what point does another alert stop adding value? And what context finally makes an alert actionable?
I guess a lot of the customers we talk to, they're really, the biggest thing is they have a lot of duplicates in their alerting process. And the one thing we kind of see in the market is they're really looking at consolidating the type of alerts. So instead of having technology alerts from like a CASB, a DLP, an identity, what they were looking for is a consolidated platform that reduces the alert and that has less duplication.
Right. And not only that, you also want to have it enriching the original alert, right?
Yeah.
It's not simply a question of saying, hey, is this alert now nefarious to me or whatever not. You need to have to take that into context of what did I get originally pulled into? What is that alert telling me? And how can that enrich my team to make an actionable decision based on what I'm seeing in the actual event?
Yeah.
So that's really important. I think now a lot of the customers would agree that they're inundated with the types of alerts and event types. So this is where the fidelity then really comes into play.
And Ruben, how does compromised identity change which alerts you trust?
Right. Like I think identity now is the new perimeter. I think it's been, de facto standard what it is right now. We used to say endpoint used to be the perimeter, but I think the identity is now what's defining the value of what a compromised situation might be. So the value of an identity should be at the forefront. You're seeing a lot of investment from various organizations going into identity space. You're seeing a lot of situations where the identity is now the prime vector going into an organization. Most attackers now start with valid credentials that they have received from whatever way that they get their information from. They log in, then move laterally within the organization, elevating their privileges, whatever case might be. So to me, the identity now is the forefront of cybersecurity.
And what are your thoughts, Hashim?
I actually agree with that. Like a lot of our security practitioners have kind of shifted and now look at identity first. They make major investments in identity. Also, technologies looking at like anomalies with user behavior analytics have been added into it. It wasn't there like 5 years ago when we talk about it. Today, they're looking at it. Okay, we want your technology to integrate with our identity. Plus, we want analytics based on that because there is a high risk of insider threats. And then you have these kind of feeds going into your SOC tools, right? So I think that's where the market is shifting. And I think with AI and all of that coming in, we're going to see better fidelity or efficacy on the identity now and understanding, is this behavior based on this identity an anomaly or is it normal? And then kind of go from there.
To hijack on your point here, it's not like UEBA is new. It's been something that has been available for
years,
about a decade now, right? So what's changing now is how much that big data or coming in with AI and accelerating from a cyber defender perspective, hey, what is good, what is bad, right?
Yeah.
Outside of the traditional, impossible time traveler type situations, but really going into the nitty gritty of what is this person doing? What is identification or that entity doing? That is it legitimate? And do we want to be allowing that to be happening within my environment? And again, we want to empower our community. We want to empower our user base. We don't want to limit them, but definitely want to put some guardrails around it to allow our SOC team to look and monitoring, hey, is this something we wanted to address or not?
So this moves us nicely into the next question. So Ruben, if you can continue on, why are user behavior and data movement more important than threat signatures alone?
again, threat signatures are very common in the space now. I think a lot of us have. If you look at just an article I read yesterday in Forrester, right, saying how the traditional EPP technologies are kind of like dead in the sense that we need to move beyond that. This is now where the identity space is now forefront of this discussion. Signature-based technologies, or even even if you leverage AI on top of that, does only go so far. You need to now also understand what permissions those identities are doing. And we tend to sometimes only statistically or statically look at an identity based on a human, but there are non-human identities that are in play as well. There are a lot of keys, especially when you come into cloud space. Those are all the identities managed very differently in that environment. What partners or extension of your own network are you allowing to do a valid credential use, right? So you need to go beyond just your traditional viewpoint on that particular topic.
Yeah, agreed.
Anything you have to add there?
And just like threat signatures are generally something that's already known. So when they're looking at it from a prevention perspective, we already know this is a signature, whereas from a behavior and data, it's changing in real time. So I think you really, as practitioners and businesses now, really understood that, hey, if this behavior is changing, we need to know that. And this data is moving. Today, it's moving from your account to a OneDrive. Tomorrow, it's somebody from a different country moving it to a different account.
Absolutely.
Those are the anomalies that you don't see in a signature format, right? So it really, I think the change is coming where behavior and data is going to be the next big thing we look at.
There's a reason why attackers are using phishing as a main vector of attack, right? It's popular, it works. People want to help people, right? You all heard about that famous help desk stories that when they're giving out credentials or resetting passwords. The help desk in its nature wants to help people, right? So attackers will leverage that human vector to allow them to get information they want to get to.
Yeah, and that's the biggest risk is also like we have IT guys who have privileged access and their behaviors are changing and really need to detect that. And these are the guys we got to worry about.
So as a customer, what should an executive consider if they're looking to transition from one MSSP to another? I know topic here is around alerts and alert fatigue, but I think it's also very important that if you're in the transition from one partner to another, what are the key things that you should look at?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I think what's important to the customers I speak to is how many alerts that the first level will look into and how much more homework will be dumped down into the customer. That's really important, right? If the customer's investing into an MSSP, they want to make sure that what they're getting value back in terms of alerting, in terms of noise, is of most importance to them. They want that MSSP to take care of that initial triage. They want the MSSP to take care of that first investigation. And they want their own personnel to really be looking at the potential real value detections that come into play. So I think that should be at the most forefront of what they're going to be coming back. Up to what level do you want that MSSP to be autonomous in their actions?
Your thoughts, Hashan?
I think it just depends on the quality of the output from the MSSP provider at the end of the day. It's just really like you're going to get a lot of noise. Your environment's going to grow, right? As you scale, they got to scale. And then they really got to be at the front line, like you said, to really be able to triage it at level 1, level 2, and then bring it to you so you guys can triage it from a customer standpoint. I think that's what customers are looking for. They are looking at automation tools, obviously, with the new technologies, but you still need a human to kind of really validate that is this a real alert or is it a severity or whatever it is. And I think MSSPs generally do a good job and you really want to vet that. The only other story that I've been in the middle of was when there's a breach and then you have an MSSP partner and yourself and you're in the middle of the fire and all you're doing is pointing fingers. Generally, you really want to make sure that the MSSP is able to kind of help you go through that journey in that kind of phase, right? It's not just alerting anymore from an MSSP. You're really looking for how are they going to be help you down the road, especially if there's an incident. I think that trust factor and the capability and the skill set needs to be present.
You definitely want clear rules of engagement between your MSSP, different providers, your different partners.
Yeah.
Even in some cases, your retainer that you have on already on staff.
How are they going to work?
Work
it's such a critical step.
And you have to look in beyond the future. You touched on this a little bit, right? Expanding attack surface. If you look at, buzzword right now, AI, that's a whole new area of attack surface that attackers are going to be leveraging. Does your MSSP currently cover that? Are they willing to help you look into new attack surfaces that you're not covering here today? Who knows what 27, 20, 28, 29 will bring to us in that space too. So that's definitely something that the MSSP needs to be flexible in working. And then when you specifically talking about AI, how are they leveraging potentially AI to augment their teams to make you, again, more efficient within your services?
Yeah. Like you're really looking at how are they upgrading in parallel to you.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, there's this new buzzword, agentic AI, and a few MSSPs that I've gotten to explore keep bringing that word up. What are your thoughts with agentic AI and SOC Maturity?
I mean,
I can, like, the way I see it, I've talked to some customers in this room too, and it's a learning curve for all parties, to be honest. Even I don't know sometimes when I'm sitting in that meeting and I'm like, okay, how is this whole thing going to come together? Where are we intercepting the data? Who's going to look at it? How does that process flow? I think there's a lot to it because you have these agents and then you have the agentic AI piece, right? They all work together. So there's layers of these things that you need to kind of bring together. And then the customer has like an LLM that they're building and they're trying to pull that resource in. So it's a very complex model. And I don't think so MSSPs have come that far yet, I believe, or are still in their immature state to kind of get that going while the customer is still building it, right?
Yeah, talking to my customers, they all want to get there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. If you look at what an attacker does, they're leveraging that technology to use it in their attacks. So you need to respond in kind in that same velocity that they are using to attack you. So it's inevitable that organizations need to adapt that. What they need to, I think what organizations need to know is where does that agentic conversation fit in? What piece of my technology, cybersecurity technology stack, am I going to deploy that and then use that safely, right? Because we also want to put some guardrails around that.
Yeah.
That whole automation side, you do need a human somewhere, sometime, at a certain point to say yes, no, maybe, and or whatever ifs and that, right? So there are definitely areas that need to be automated, augmented, but with some guardrails around it.
On that note, Ruben, where should automation stop threats automatically and where should humans stay involved?
Well, I have a very bullish stance on that. Personally speaking, I think we should be automating as much as possible because if you want to be efficient, you need to automate, right? If you look at the latest Anthropic research where an attacking group leveraged a fully AI automated attack, human intervention was from around 80 to 90%. Automated intervention was 89%. Human intervention was only 10 to 20%. We need to be as quickly as that. I'm more on the side of prevent it, block it, automate that, and ask for forgiveness afterwards because I think that's a higher risk, lower reward type of viewpoint. But I am also cognizant that business needs to continue, right? So certain businesses don't have that luxury to be able to fully automate that particular step. Yeah. So every organization has to make their certain risk assessment based on that. But that is my personal viewpoint on that.
I think in automations, like depends on what it is, right? If it's a workflow, obviously go for it all in, automate it. But if it's like a data flow, you really need to put some governance before you put it into motion. And I think where it kind of delineates to a human side of it is just like when you're thinking about what you're not automating, it's probably like any users that are privileged access management or legal holds or anything like that. I think that's where you really need to have a human to understand, okay, it's privacy audit compliance kind of person that needs to intervene. And that's where the human element comes in. You cannot automate that. You really need somebody from legal to look at that policy. Like you can't say, okay, here's the AI document. I'll just accept all terms and click accept and move on. You really should get a human to kind of validate, where's my data? Where's the privacy? Is it staying within Canada?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like those kind of things is I feel like we cannot just depend on automating things. But like I tell customers, if you can automate your DLP controls and your data efficacy is good, automate it. Because there's no way you're going to sit there and look through it.
No.
What are your thoughts, Mary?
Currently, if I were to look at my stance today, automate where possible, but sometimes there's limitations. whether it's due to legacy systems, homegrown systems, where there isn't any API that you can set up. But you did bring up a good point. Like when you speak about MSSPs, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
So, and the MSSP is a part of the security team that manages the alerts, reviews the alerts, and triggers, for example, the CSRT if there is an incident. But I think at the end of the day, you gotta partner with them. You have to maintain the governance piece. That's key. Yeah. That's one area that I've seen that we've struggled in, keeping them accountable for what they've got to deliver, because we've had some missed SLAs.
Yeah. And those are not good when you need them the most, right?
No, they're not good, especially when you're facing an incident. Yeah. And you've got to report up to your boss.
I think that's what you should test in MSSP is just create an incident and test them in real time.
Yeah, that'd be good. So if we move on to our next question, how should MSSPs and customers measure success beyond alert volume?
Oh. Beyond alert volume. I think that has to be on the way you triage the amount of alerts. It's hard to measure, I would say, from a customer's perspective, because you're adding new technologies, you're constantly changing. But there should be like a benchmark. An easy benchmark would be in a quarter, how many alerts you have triaged, how many were good, how many need policy changes. So if you kind of said in a quarter, I had 100 alerts, out of that, 80 of them we triaged, that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then the rest were disposed, right? But if you had like a lower score, I think you would go on the opposite end.
Yeah, I think that could be subjective as well too. For the different organizations, they might have different thresholds of tolerance and risk versus others. You touched on, missing an SLA. That could be a big deal for certain organizations. Whereas others, whatever, well, we'll put it in the bucket of the who cares. We'll negotiate that. When the contract terms come around and you want to charge a certain amount, we'll say, well, you missed this. So I'm expecting some, monetary compensation based on that. Those are discussions that could be had. Nevertheless, I think it's very important to know what your expectations are, put them up front, have them set on the table with the providers, so clearly what's important to you and how you get there.
And lastly, if executives could see one metric that captures alert overload, what should it be?
I think that turnaround is probably how many people are around, what's the rotation within my SOC, what's the mood, what's the attitude. Those are a lot of soft indicators that it's kind of hard to say. You need to have a little human side of the equation there to be able to work. It's hard to statistically prove that out or to bring that to a forefront of a discussion. But definitely have a manager or a director or leader that's willing to get to the team, to understand to the team, and work on that human compassion side to get some of that information down.
Tashin?
Metrics are hard. There's lots of metrics. Every customer is like, and probably from the other side, there's a lot of metrics you would want, and that was always changing based on different business units. I would say most of the customers we talk to in terms of metrics, they're really looking at the number of alerts, what kind of threats, like vulnerabilities they've had within those alerts, how high the risk is. I think the other one we're seeing a lot is between identity and data. They're really looking at understanding how many compromised identities are there or shared credentials with identities. We see that a lot becoming a metric. Data exfiltration has always been on the top. So when you're looking at from a customer's perspective and asking an MSSP, they're really looking at the big picture. Mm-hmm. And I think it also comes down to the customer's board. Generally, I find the board dictates the customer, the CIO, the CISO, and says, okay, these are our things we are looking at. How are you guys going to give us that kind of a metric or data? And then that kind of flows down to the MSSP and says, okay, you see all the alerts. Where are we falling? And where is the gap, right? So if it's a financial company, they're looking at data. If it's health, they're also looking like a PHI, right? So everybody's a bit different on their metric over my time with the customers. But I think generally, like the few most important ones are these are our alerts. This is what we've triaged, and this is how we have done in year 1, 2, and 3 kind of thing. And then they kind of go forward, right? So I think most executives are looking for that. The one thing I've noticed in the last few months is just a lot of things around phishing. They would love to see their phishing and malware block alerts. I don't know why that's becoming.
I'm not too sure where that adds value really. But
it's like it's very simple, very old school.
Yeah.
I see AI, but like, okay, how many AI apps have you used? Like Gen AI, okay, great. But like, what is the MSSP gonna do with that? Nothing.
Yeah.
We've got something similar at work. I think it's just a test of human behavior.
Okay. Just testing like against how they're working in the environment.
I guess the ultimate proof is, you had a security incident. Was it contained? Was it remediated? Was the issue solved? And did it turn into a breach? Right? Was it material? And did I have to declare it? I think if you don't have to get to that point and you were able to contain that security incident, because those will happen, right? That's okay. How did I respond to it? That'll be the ultimate measuring.
But I think ultimately it's how quickly did the MSSP identify.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's
right?
a good point.
And then notify the customer. I think that's very critical.
That is critical. Yeah.
Speed is the name of the game.
Right. Because if you need to engage your forensic partner, it's a typical SLA 2 hours for boots on ground, if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you say as a customer, Mary, that you would like to see more from a metric standpoint? Would you like to see what the SLA is on remediation of an alert or a breach or whatever it may be? Like, would you reverse that and say, I'd rather see how long or how fast you guys can resolve a problem?
So those are some of the KRIs that we captured today. Mean time to detect, mean time to respond, plus mean time to remediate, outside of total time spent to resolve the breach.
Yeah, so you guys are capturing that.
And those are the ones that we report up to the board on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Those are great metrics.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a dual responsibility. So we're all players in this. And I think having the right MSSP is critical. Making sure you have your right assets being monitored is also very critical, depending on the organization that you work with.
Maybe I could ask you a question on that. How do you keep your MSSP accountable to those metrics, right? How do you manage that relationship? Because it could be tough sometimes, right?
It's been challenging. We've got our good days and our bad days. If I had to do this all over again, because I inherited the MSSP that I work with, I'd place a lot of governance on them and ensuring that they stick to the agreed to terms on the contract. And also having the ability to be able to onboard assets without having limits set and to enable alerts. Those were some key areas of pain for us.
Right.
Interesting.
So there's always limits. So if you're in the process of looking for an MSSP, make sure you ask the right questions. Make sure that they have technologies that they use that have that built-in AI instead of them being dependent on the customer, because that's another key factor today.
Did you ask them what automation tools they use on the back end?
For our current provider,
No.
They depend on our Sentinel. So we use Sentinel today.
Right. And they depend on your information to kind of get...
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And you would like to see the reverse probably.
I would like to see the reverse, have an MSSP that can do up to level 3 monitoring with agentic AI built in.
So it goes back to the topic of a conversation.
Yeah.
Too many alerts, not enough action, right? So you need to have the right data to take the appropriate actions into our context for today.
Yep.
All right.
So that wraps up our question. So security success isn't measured by how many alerts you generate. It's measured by how quickly you understand what matters and you stop it. Attackers don't care about dashboards. They care whether you acted in time.
Any questions from the audience? Anybody wants to ask us a question? Wait, we're going to catch you on the
Microphone.
So we heard that speed is it's all about speed, right? How fast we can react. So and also we saw that we heard from
Hashim.
Hashtag.
So yeah.
So that 80% of the alerts if the tickets are triaged, the alerts are triaged, it's good enough, right? So you as a customer, so I'm talking because I use MSP, right? So I as a customer, should I see the alerts, or I should depend on MSP to go to level 2 or level 3 as we discussed? Because how would I know as a customer that MSP is reacting as they should?
You want to take that one on, or can I answer?
You can start.
My opinion is the fact that you should not be getting an alert every time that happens, because that is beyond the nature of what that service is going to be providing you. You should get a report at the end of whatever interval you'd like, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, of what happened and what the metrics they had to, investigate, respond, and remediate to it. If you continuously keep getting those alerts and your team has to then action on top of what your MSSP is doing, kind of beside the point.
But then how would I know that how many percentage of alerts were resolved? Like I had to wait for the tech report
you'll
to
get a
come
report
later on, and I might miss some critical alerts, and assuming that somebody's watching for it.
Well, you need to take into action that your MSSP is taking care of all the alerts or the
Assumption
combined
is
alerts.
what I don't want to do.
Great. Well,
that's where.
You got to keep them
Because
responsible.
that security mindset. So sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be more hands off on it, then you need to have a manager of the managers, right? That will potentially look at those incidents, ensure that they are triaged, taken care of, and remediated. You probably would have more context to this here, based on your experience here with your MSSP, right?
You've got to keep them responsible and honest. At the end of the day, weekly touch points help.
It is.
Especially if you have a SOC manager, get them engaged with the MSSP's SOC manager. So there's constant communication. Because as an example, we went through a service degradation and we didn't find out till 2 days after. Luckily, we weren't faced with any issue, but we should have been notified earlier, especially when you're paying for a service.
Yep.
That's part of the agreement.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're asking about, right? Oh.
If you're concerned about MSPs not doing the job and looking at alerts, you can also ask for sampled evidence. So if you have a monthly update, say I want, you choose a sample of alerts and you do a random sampling and you see what the result is. If you're sampling 10 and 5 come back bogus, then you're going to dig further, right? But I would do sampling.
Good point.
Hey, Mary. For someone that came into and inherited an environment with an MSP already there, how do you come in and set the tone as someone that's new and that there's a pre-existing MSP in place?
Great question.
Oh.
Loaded question. Wasn't easy. I've been at Moneris now for almost 8 months. Like you said, I inherited the MSSP. I was in no position to go to my leader and say, they're doing a shit job. We got to boot them. So I took my time. I assessed them. The first thing that I did was ask them for an inventory of assets that they were monitoring. And I took the inventory of assets that we have in place, and there was a big discrepancy. So started engaging with the partner, got in touch with our Microsoft partner as well because we're using Sentinel. Other biggest problem is the out-of-the-box use cases weren't enabled. So talk to your MSSP. Oh, too much noise. We don't have the manpower. Okay, so how do we make this better? So there's been a lot of churn. They showed some progress, but at the end of the day, I had to make a decision and to move off of them and partner up with another partner. I'm giving them 1 year opportunity to help prove themselves. Again, agentic AI, they're not basing their security reviews of alerts on our tooling. They have the tools, the AI tools, in order to help the automation, the triage to go a lot quicker, versus with our current partner, they depend on our tooling. So that's a big gap today. So if you want to look at advancing, look at the capabilities of the MSSP and what they can offer. But
The same boat. That's why I was the question.
we can talk after. Like, Yeah, but someone new going into an organization, take your time, assess, because you don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah, thanks for the panel. So I have a question on AI-enabled SOC, which is being sold as the next big thing to reduce the alert volumes. So I'm interested to know how to feed business context into such solutions so that they can be more predictable and the quality can be measured as well.
What you're seeing with a lot of the agentic platforms is that they are leveraging your data to train their own AI. So as you continuously feed that agentic with true positive, false positives, rerun that analysis again, whatever decision triage you're giving it, it starts learning within your own environment. So it becomes its own entity within your network or your platform. Let's just call it that, right? So that will allow it to make more business type decisions based on your particular feedback, and that's how it will learn. It's obviously not an overnight thing, right? Like any other AI engine, the more data it gets, the better it will become. So there is a learning curve there, but it should come to the point that it becomes fully agentic. And you're right, it is a topic of the future, right? That's where it is going.
Thanks.
No other questions? Awesome.
I ask one.
Of course, go right ahead.
Yeah. So from a data loss prevention perspective, that's how I will say, right? The current solutions are more old-based and pattern-based, and now we are moving more into learning context and applying DLP accordingly. So are you seeing trends where existing vendors are picking up and building it on top, or we have to get a completely new solution on top of our existing solution? So what are the trends that your industry around context-packed DLP?
Good point. I think DLP is a very tough technology, period, to manage, simply because of data classification is not always easy. There's a lot of challenges that come into that. When you're adding it on now from the AI side of it, you're starting to see that what customers are more concerned about is losing data to an AI prompt, or customers inadvertently just sending confidential data to platforms that they should not be doing. So I think it's more so an educational play or putting guardrails around those tools as opposed to enforcing a DLP control, because that control is hard. The guardrail might be a little easier to set in place. So that there's not a real answer to tell you. I think it's an evolving conversation. It's an evolving education that you're going to have to continuously have with your workforce to enable them to make better decisions. Easier said than done. I totally understand. So I think the education part is probably the most important.
I think it's going to come down to like classification of the data, how it's classified to begin with. Because what eventually will happen is you will have a subset of data in data lakes or wherever it may be. You really need to understand what kind of data is, and you have to classify that data. And I think that's where the trend is moving on data, because a lot of people do have data. Now the challenge is, where is my data? Now, once you put that layer on, you understand where that data is. Now you're going to adopt an AI tool or LLMs or whatever that you're going to build. And these tools are agentic AI, whatever it is, they're going to just go and pull that data.
Yeah.
So you really have to start scrubbing and understanding the core data you have and what is intellectual property of your organization. And then once you have that kind of tagged, and then when you layer the AI tools or whatever you adopt, you're hopefully that you have a very clear understanding of what a user is putting into those models and what kind of data. So at least you know that John from HR took this data and put it into this LLM model, and you have some kind of a trail behind it. I think it'll be a layered approach, if anything, Jeff.
For some more questions, thank you very much for coming to our fireside chat today.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.